Hi guys, in this video we'll be creating an edit button that will give us a chance to edit the existing project and add the description up. The description will be firing the updated data back to the update method so that it can be saved onto the database. So let's get started. So very first thing we're going to do, open up our application in the editor of our choice, and then we need to register our route. Now let's go to routes.php, and you'll notice that we're making use of resourceful routes. And what happens is we're using AJAX to retrieve existing information from the database. So essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to use post method of JavaScript form submission method, which will eventually make a call, AJAX call, to the PHP file, which will provide us with a response that will contain the information about that particular record. So all the methods in there is resourceful routing, they're basically get methods. So we're gonna have to provide an edit method as a post. So we're gonna have to register on top of this, man. I'll show you what I mean. If you take a look at the route list, what am I doing? And you'll notice that the edit method in projects here is actually a get, or it's a get request. So we'll be sending a post request using our AJAX, because we are using AJAX to retrieve data. We're not going to refresh the page, but when we submit the updated data, we'll be submitting again as a post request to the update method. So the update method here is a put request, put or patch request, you can call it. If that's the right word, put and patch. So let's begin by registering our route. We'll go here and let's say post. We're posting to projects / give the key, which is in this case is project / edit, and the name of the controller method is and another line. So project controller and edit projects / edit, and essentially we'll be passing in our slug and not an ID. So let's just bind that as well while we are here. So how to bind that? It's very easy. So you can route, and we can bind the model, which we haven't done yet. It'll help us pass in the instance when using the forms. So we can bind the model here. So we're gonna bind the project's model with this key. Like so, and also we're going to bind the slug. Now how to do so? There's a static method called bind, which basically you give the key to which you are binding, and then you give a closure that will take arguments. Essentially it'll take the value that you're binding and the route. But in this case we won't be having a route, but I'd like to mention it here. So essentially what it does is return app, give me the model where slug value first, and that's what it is. So now instead of passing in the ID in our forms, we can pass in the slug, and eventually it will retrieve the model for us. Now why we need to do this? Because we are storing slug and we can look up the slug, and I'm using slug for update method as well. So it's important for us to use this, because that's what I'm using in the AJAX, because that's what we're going to display when we create the show method. And we click on this, it's going to display, instead of project 1, 2, 3, it's going to display the name of the project, which is YouTube videos. And as you drill deeper inside projects, tasks, and subtasks, you will see YouTube videos, and then these are the tasks, and this is the subtask, rather than seeing 1/1/2, you know, not very user friendly. So we bind the key, which is going to be the slug, with the slug, and of course we also do route model binding for it's going to help us out. Now what else we need to do here, what else we can do here while we're here is okay, we can add a method like delete for we're going to create a method called hide, but maybe we should do that in the next video. In this video we'll just focus on the edit method. So this bit is for the routes. Close it, and now the next thing is to go to our controller. In the controller we're gonna be writing the edit method, which essentially will be providing it with an instance of our model, and we will also be sending a request object, because essentially we have to actually write some logic. Whether request is AJAX, then do this. If it's not AJAX, then don't do this. Now essentially what happens is we are only taking care of AJAX request because our form is based upon AJAX, and else. Now our form is using AJAX to retrieve data, and the method is going to be post, which we already registered in a route. So what if the request is not AJAX? Well, in that case we won't be able to present an edit form page because we haven't created one. We don't have a form that is we don't have a separate form page where user can actually edit or add a new project. The form exists on the same page as a model window, and it's using AJAX. So in this case, I'm just in case if JavaScript is not enabled, it's going to break our application. So I'm just gonna take the user back to a home page, which requires this all the projects created by the user. Projects, order by, and then get. So order by, we're gonna order them by created at, just like the same way we did in here in the index method, which is somewhere here. So create the authenticated user, give me all the projects, and order them by this and this. And let's just say we'll pass in these two values as well. So basically we can pretty much copy paste this here and here. So what this is going to do, it's not going to represent an edit form to the user. It's not going to present that, but it's going to save us from our application from being messed up. So our main focus is going to be on the AJAX request. Now we know we are using AJAX, so let's just focus here. If the request is AJAX, then what I would like to do is create a response variable, which is going to be containing an array of what? Basically array of ID of the project, which is going to be instance project ID, and then I want project slug, I want name, I want description, and I want due date. Name, and I want a slug, which is going to be slug. But what I did was, because we'll be using same script to pull out task related slug and subtask related slug, so I named it, instead of slug, I named it project slug to be able to differentiate properly in our AJAX. And that's going to be project ID slug, name, description, due date, and then we're going to return this response as JSON, and that's it. That's all we have to do in our controller method. Now once we update the data, it's going to come to the update method. It's going to be saving in the update method, but at the moment we'll just try to retrieve data from the from the database. So let's go back to our home view, which is the project's home, and let's click here. Let's say I'm going to give it a dedicated space. Let's just say class of 3 columns, and that's just bootstrap stuff. And then I'm going to create a unordered list. We want the buttons. It's going to have 3 buttons essentially. One is going to be the edit button, one is going to be the completed button, so we can toggle the status completed or pending and mark as pending or mark as complete. One is going to be edit and one is going to be delete. So let's just create one for now, but we'll essentially be creating 3 in the near future. So list inline, and let's say it occupies the full space, and this is going to be an li, which is going to be 3 column wide, and we'll create a form here. Form open, and then I can just say form close, open and close. Now when we open a form, what we are essentially saying here is there is going to be a method which is going to be post, and then there's going to be an action which is going to be, you guessed it right, so project controller at edit. And why I created this array, because we're gonna have to pass in the slug, otherwise it cannot find which project you're talking about, which project you want me to retrieve data for you for editing. And then we're going to pass in the class which is form control, form horizontal class, like so. So this is going to be form horizontal and project slug and project controller and edit action, and method is going to be post, and that's going to be our structure of our form. Now we need to create a button, and also when we fire that button, that should fire a model window. So in our partials, I provided the source code on the GitHub has this folder called forms. It has a folder called edit, which has 3 different files: projects, subtask, and task. If you open the projects, you'll notice there's a input type hidden that has a project slug as a value. This is where we pass in the value when each project is listed in our in here. So each one will have a hidden value of the slug, which will go with the post request when we try to retrieve the data. So, and this is just a button that is going to have a class of edit. So anywhere you see edit button, it'll have a class of edit, which will eventually be triggering the JavaScript. So this is the trigger for the AJAX. I can't really show you right now because it's in the minified version, the JS. But if you would like, it's not minified, so I might be able to show you. So if you go to .edit, you will notice that here, if the method is not patch, then do this. But if the method is patch, when the edit button is triggered, then the project slug is going to be the hidden project slug. And then based upon that, I want you to post this form and then retrieve the information. And once you retrieve, then it's ready, and you can we can use that information to fill up the form. This is the model window, and you can go through this. If you want me to run a separate video tutorial for the front end side, I can do so, but I guess most of the people are interested in Laravel. This is, if you want, you can go through each one and learn yourself, or I can help you out with, no worries. Now, yeah, that's we're gonna have to include that in our home page. So let's do that right now. It'll give us a button. It'll give us include will have partials dot forms dot edit and dot projects, and we're going to pass in an array that will contain the variable which is submit text button, and we'll call it edit, and that should give us an edit button. If we refresh, we should see an edit button here, and it does show us that button. But when you try to press it, it'll try to trigger the JavaScript, but it won't be able to. If you open the Firebug and then you press this, you'll see that it runs a post request, and it says AJAX request failed, because if you go inside here, it says it cannot find the column s_slug, because I must have done something wrong with the typing. So let's go to project controller, and project slug is correct, and this looks correct. Name, description, due date. So what is wrong and where is it wrong? We passed in the slug. Let's go to routes.php and see if we have done the binding correctly. Function takes a value route, and that looks all good to me. There's nothing wrong here. So what is the problem? It says it cannot find s_lug because, of course, we don't have a field name s_lug. We need to provide slug field name, not s_lug. So what are we posting here? So basically, we are not posting, if you see here, we're just posting a slug, which is a YouTube videos from the hidden field. We will be posting this to the edit method, and once it, based upon this slug, it's going to query the model. It's going to return us the data. So what should we do? Why is this happening? Let's try sending an ID, and is there something wrong here? Everything looks good here. Project slug, and then refresh and see what happens, and that gives an error as well. So what is happening here? Let's just click this one for a second. Troubleshooting is also part of learning. When you troubleshoot a problem, you're actually learning a lot of different things, and when there is a bug, it makes you look at so many different things which just usually just run away, in front of your eyes, and you miss out on those. But when you're trying to solve a problem, you'll see, oh, I'm sending a token, I'm sending a slug, everything looks good, which means you sort of try to look at everything else. Now this is like what it says here, column not found s_lug where clause. So in where clause, so which means we're gonna have to, it's something to do with the routes. So essentially what happened is, look at here, I put a capital L. So we're gonna follow the conventions. Every time there is a capital, like it's case sensitive, so a small mistake can cost us a lot of trouble. So if we do L, let's go back to our application now and refresh, and this time it should give us some output, which it gives us nothing. Everything works fine because we have changed we are passing in the ID. And if you look at here, what we are posting essentially is this slug, but slug is null because I haven't passed in the slug actually. Where is the here? So change that back to slug, and when you go here, refresh and press, and then this time it returns us the result set, which is YouTube videos is the slug, dash is the slug, project slug, and name is YouTube videos with capital, as you can see right here, and description is this, which is not visible right now, but it's there, and due date as a string. So we are able to retrieve our values based upon the slug. Now next thing we are going to do, close this one away, go away. Now we're going to be using this value to pre-fill the model window. So what we have to do essentially is include a model window here for the edit window. So we go here, and then we need to create a new model window. You can use the same model window, it doesn't really matter so much, but I like to keep things dedicated window for a dedicated use just in case. So create a new folder, add it in the models, and then you can pretty much copy this file projects in here, and then you open it, and all you have to do is add this class edit model window, this class, because this is the class being used on every edit window, and that's how we are firing it. So it's going to fire this window. So add this class edit model window, and you can change create projects to edit projects, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not using that. I'm using this selector in the AJAX. Why I'm using this selector? Because I'll show you in the next couple of videos, when you try to query subtask, which is actually bound to a task, and also task is bound to a project, you need to make sure you provide not just the subtask slug, but you also have to provide task slug to be able to query task model, associated task model, and you have to supply project slug as well. So every edit model window, I'll show you when it happens in the future. And then you will create a new form model, because we will be binding our model, we'll be sending this instance project, and then method is going to be patch, because we're sending a patch request. You can say put, doesn't really matter. An action is going to be project controller update method, although we are not focusing on the update method in this video, but we have to specify where we are posting the information to. And then here you can pass in the ID, or you can pass in this slug, doesn't really matter, because we are not okay, let's pass in the slug, or leave it to the ID, just do something different here, and class is forms bundle. Now why I chose this form, so I can call it edit project. The title will be edit project rather than saying add project, add a new project, you know. But you can call a variable, I suppose, and then call the same form and pass in the variable. Any way it works. And then you're gonna include a form, which is the body of this, and that's going to be pages, projects, forms, edit project. So it's going to be in here, forms, edit, create a new folder, and then you copy this file here. Now the difference between this file and this file essentially right now is just same. It's mainly here. So I don't want to input any old fields. What I want to do is bring the fields from the database and then present here. So just get rid of this, and this will be removed. It'll be filled with the information that comes from the database. That's the only difference there is. And then use this here @include, and then close your form. And of course, this is the most important part where you specify. Now you may notice I'm not using anchor tag, I'm using button. I'm giving this class submit button. This is going to fire the this form submission to the update method on. This is the selector I'm using in AJAX. If you want to write your own AJAX, you can use any selector, but if you're using my files, try to stick to this selector. or you can go open the all.js and change this selector to any selector you want. And that's pretty much it. So we're gonna have to include this, and once we include this here, so this is going to be just change that to edit. So instead of models create, we'll call models edit projects, and you see we're going to pass in this variable as edit or update, more appropriate, you know. Now we're gonna have to write a check here that if there are some projects, only then you need to show this model window. Otherwise you don't need to show this model window, because if there are no projects, and then of course I know there won't be any edit button because this won't run. There won't be any projects. If the count of projects is 0, we will never run this detail. But I also don't want to see this model window either, so we're gonna have to provide that little bit of logic. Let's go back and see if it works and refresh. I hope there are no errors. There are no errors. Now I'm gonna create a couple of projects here quickly. Let's just say swimming lessons for kids, organized swimming lessons. My typing is really bad, and I'm just gonna run a swimming and then date, just give some date, and just say guitar lessons, music lessons. Okay, now just to show that it works and how it works differently, so I'm gonna click here edit for the swimming lessons, and it should query the model and bring back the form, the edit project, and present me with the information. Now at the moment the update won't work because we haven't really set up our update method in the controller, but as you can see we are able to run a post request, AJAX post request to the Laravel controller method, and it queries the model and sends us back a response which we can fill in the model window, which is pretty cool. And it in the Firebug you can pretty much see when you run a request. For example, this one, you're sending a slug, which is guitar lessons is the slug, and based on the slug it queries this information and submits here. In the next video we'll work on the update method, and after that we'll work on delete method and complete that, which will be done together in one video, and then our project side will be finished, and that'll be a big achievement. And then we'll progress towards tasks, and once we do tasks, subtask is not too hard. It's just pretty much copying the same thing, except the nesting the routes within routes. That's all it is, and that's pretty simple once you understand how it works. So I'll be working with you hand in hand to get that sorted. So if you run into any issues here, try to go through my JavaScript file and see if your selectors are correct, you're using the correct selectors. But otherwise I think I tried to explain everything in the video. Just in case if you run into any problems, you can write some comments or send me messages. And thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice day.